to all those who participated. Those were people that were part of our consultations across the country. And thank you to Brendan for putting that video together. Also, just an announcement, because we are millennials, you may have noticed on Snapchat that we have a filter for today's event. So please snap and please use the filter. And tweet and Instagram and Facebook. We want to make sure that millennials across the country hear from us and that we're hearing from them. So moving on. Next, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Nora Loreto. Nora Loreto is a writer, musician, and activist based in Quebec City. She is the author of From Demonized to Organized, Building the New Union Movement, and she is the editor of the Canadian Association of Labour Media. Nora.
Bon matin tout le monde. C'est toujours fun d'être dans une banque où je peux dire, oui, on va mettre en feu le système de capitalisme dans un banque. Donc, j'espère que, en premier, c'est super fort français, c'est vraiment difficile de me comprendre parce que le début de cette discours sera en français. Malheureusement, je suis moins drôle en français, donc ça va être juste un tiers de ce discours. Je vais switcher en anglais plus tard, mais merci aux traducteurs, les traducteurs, traductrices pour me rendre drôle en anglais et me rendre drôle en français. Et merci beaucoup à Niki pour m'inviter ici. Je pense que, comme les gens dans la vidéo ont dit, on est en face des deux grandes crises le plus difficile à battre pour notre génération, c'est la crise économique et la crise de notre économie. Et comme Chelsea a dit, ils sont liés. Mais je vais mettre la table un peu pour l'aujourd'hui, pour les conversations qui s'en viennent, pour parler d'où vient le discours qu'on voit autour de nous comme les jeunes. Comment ça touche pas juste les jeunes, mais toute la société. Et c'est quoi les connexions entre notre réalité actuelle et les systèmes d'opprimation qui a formé Canada depuis les débuts de notre pays. Donc, pour commencer, comme Niki a dit, moi je viens de Québec, mais vraiment avec mon accent incroyable, anglophone. Je viens vraiment du nord de l'Ontario, mais j'ai grandi dans le 905, la grande région de Toronto, en effet. Et j'ai passé 10 ans dans le mouvement étudiant. Et dans le mouvement étudiant, j'étais étudiant à Ashton, à Toronto, dans le centre-ville. On a entendu beaucoup les messages du Globe Mail, du National Post qui disent que les jeunes, ils s'en foutent de rien. Les jeunes, ils sont des enfants gâtés, ils veulent beaucoup des iPods. À l'époque, c'était beaucoup des iPods. Comme moi, je me 23. Mais quand on parle avec des jeunes dans les rues, c'était pas si comme ça du tout. Les jeunes s'intéressent de battre contre le racisme, de battre pour l'environnement, de battre pour une société plus juste, plus solidaire. Et c'est clair qu'il y a une déconnexion entre la classe des gens qui forment le consensus grand, le consensus de 1%, en effet, mais aussi une division entre les générations. Donc, il y a les générations plus vieux du Canada qui étaient battue après la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, et nous, la génération qui était née dans les années 80-90. Pour nous, on veut changer le monde, on veut un monde plus juste, mais si on croit qu'est-ce qui c'est écrit dans les grands journaux, c'était pas de la réalité. Donc, quand j'ai commencé à écrire le livre que j'ai écrit il y a 3 ans, de la démobilisation à l'organisation, en français, le titre, c'est difficile à dire le titre de mon livre en français. OK. Moi, j'ai posé la question pourquoi. Pourquoi ça existe les divisions entre les générations comme ça? Et c'était vraiment clair que c'était un changement fondamental de nos sociétés qui était passé par les politiques du colonialisme, par les politiques de l'économie et par les politiques sociales. Et ces politiques, on s'appelle le néolibéralisme. C'était imaginé par le diable et c'était donné à Margaret Thatcher. Et Margaret Thatcher a dit, OK, je peux tester ça en Chili. Et on a donné ça à notre Freeman, à Ronald Reagan, Brian Mulroney. Et le politique de néolibéralisme, ça s'était imposé dans tous les aspects de notre société, au Canada, dans les États-Unis aussi. Mais c'est quoi ça, le néolibéralisme? Ben, c'est un système qui dit que le plus important, la personne le plus important, c'est moi, ou c'est toi. Ben, c'est pas une communauté. C'est pas une communauté de petite ville. C'est pas une communauté ethnique. C'est pas une communauté religieuse. C'est moi puis mon chum, puis mes enfants. Et pas mon chum, mon mari, pas comme ça. Et quand on crée une société basée sur une personne, sa femme, ses enfants, ça détruit le sens qu'on a de communauté du tout. Et ça change la façon qu'on parle des politiques, des grands politiques et des politiques locales. Bon, je vais changer en anglais maintenant. Donc, okay. What has that done to us? That means, through the politics of neoliberalism, we now have debates over the debt, right? A politician can get elected by saying, there's a phantom balance sheet and I'm going to fix it. And the journalists say, this guy knows what he's talking about. We're going to elect that guy, right? That the most important thing is the balance sheet, and we don't really give a rat's ass about children, right? We don't really care about clean water. We might say we care about clean water, but we don't really care about clean water because the most important thing is the debt. And it has completely altered how we talk about social solidarity and how we talk about our relationship with each other. Under neoliberalism, and when I started to write this book, community became the most dangerous response to the state, right? So from the perspective of Stephen Harper, communities of people getting together and resisting either actively resisting or resisting by existing, because we have a lot of people in this country whose existence is resistance, they need to be crushed. And we'll either crush them through social policies that give Indigenous students a third of what non-Indigenous students receive, so that they can never get past an education system that is structurally made to fail. Or we will actually beat them when they protest at the G20. Or we will arrest 99 of them when they protest on Parliament Hill for clean water and for clean air and against pipelines. And so, you know, we were living in a difficult time, 9.5 years under Stephen Harper. And when I was doing a lot of these talks, it was kind of, you know, it's kind of fun to talk about the most kind of evil representation of politics, because, you know, you talk about this evil guy, and I'm in a room of like 100, 200, 500, 1,000 people, they're like, yeah, that guy is totally evil. And we're all on the same side, right? So it's like, wicked, we're kind of screwed, but it's easy to talk about this because he's super evil and we don't like that because we're not super evil. So, you know, fast forward to 2015, or rewind, I guess, to 2015, and we have a situation where the super evil guy is kicked out. And everyone takes a sigh of relief, and we're like, this is good. And we've got a new prime minister, and his name is Justin Trudeau. And he's kind of, anyways. So he's such a nice guy, right? He's a nice guy. Okay, great. Our prime minister is a nice guy. So I think we're supposed to get better, right? Last year, I was asked to speak at a thing 2 days after the election of Justin Trudeau in Halifax, and I was like confronted with the reality of, okay, so what does it mean under Justin Trudeau? And so my message then was, well, it's the difference between like having to set a door on fire to open it, and the door being open to crack, and so we just have to push our way into it, right? We can get to Justin Trudeau, we can get to the Liberals. There were a lot of progressive Canadians that support the Liberals and support him, so this is good news. We are now a year into the mandate of Justin Trudeau. And I don't know about you, but real change has turned out to be real disappointing, right? Things have not gotten better. And arguably, all of the destructive or oppressive measures that had been placed on social activists, on organizing under Stephen Harper, they're still there, right? They are still there. We are still going to see climate activists arrested. We're still going to see a militarization of our police forces, or our security forces. And that's because we still live under neoliberalism. So you might be sitting here thinking to yourself, this is really good stuff, Nora. You're a super wicked speaker, and I love this. You might be thinking that. But what does that have to do with precarious work? So, when we create a generation of young people who are primed to be happy that they have a shitty contract, who are primed to be happy that they have been given almost nothing, because almost nothing pays the bills, a bill or two, in compared to nothing, but it doesn't allow me to buy food, right? Or it doesn't allow me to help my sister pay her tuition fees, or it doesn't help me to buy diapers. But that primes me to be really careful about how I resist the policies that I disagree with. And so you can imagine the process of creating, across all sectors, this precarious form of living. And it's not just precarious work, right? It's housing markets that are on fire, like where you cannot afford to live in Vancouver or in Toronto, unless you're in Quebec City, which is wicked, that's a whole other thing. It's housing markets that are on fire, it's not being able to find stable employment, it's being underemployed, or, my favorite thing, the lies that we were sold to accept a doubling of tuition fees in Ontario, right? That this is an investment in your future, and Bob Ray is like, I don't know what you're complaining about, because your degrees can get you $1 million more over the course of your lifetime, and I have fake math to prove it. And it's like, yeah, okay, well, fake math is fake, right? And so, what has happened is this layering of our inability to resist. And that helps. Who? That helps the 1%, that helps politicians who want to make sure that we're too busy or we're too stressed out to be able to resist. And so that also requires some very strong narratives about millennials to be circulated and to be promoted. So yesterday I was on The Current, which was amazing because it never happened. So I haven't been on The Current in 10 years since I talked about Facebook, like, whatever. Because it's still new, right? And I was asked to talk about this comment made by Finance Minister Bill Morneau, right? So Bill Morneau, what did he say? He's like, just get used to this. Get used to the precarious life, right? Because, you know, someday truck drivers are going to disappear, is what he's saying. Like, the dude, as if he knows anything about logistics, clearly, right? So you got millionaire Minister of Finance Bill Morneau telling you all to suck it, and it's how it's going to work, right? And we're supposed to go, yep, okay. The reality, though, is that the statistics don't actually bear out the reality that we will have more jobs over the course of our lifetimes than another generation. This is very interesting. There are a lot of things that are true, right? All the part-time jobs that are being added are replacing full-time jobs, that it's harder to find a good full-time job. These are things that are true. What is not true is that young Canadians will have more jobs over their lifetime. If anything, the data says that actually we're staying in jobs longer. But the data is also really it's not that good. Like, the Stats Canada doesn't track directly. But if you look at some proxy measurements, job tenure in Canada is not getting worse. And so we have a finance minister who has no problem telling young people what is effectively not true, and then saying, and so the solution is that you have to accept it. It's like, that's not a solution, dude. That's a coping mechanism, right? That is I'm gonna hug my knees and wait for the storm to pass, and oh my gosh, it's getting worse, it's not passing. The thing that we have to keep in mind when we talk about the new economy or the emerging economy is that none of this is new. This is not a new system, right? Who has been precarious forever in this country? Immigrant populations, women, racialized people, racialized workers, Indigenous people, Indigenous workers, right? Precarious work has always been the reality for a lot of Canadians. So what is different now? We had a system that was built to give the head of the family, the man, often white, probably white, the good job. A good unionized job, making a good salary. The wife could work if she wanted to, she didn't have to though, and you could raise your 2 or your 3 kids, and everything was wicked for a certain segment of the population. As we see those jobs disappear, and as we're seeing increasing precarity across the entire system, now we have politicians saying, oh, maybe this is a bad thing. Because we don't have social structures set up to help someone like me who gets pregnant with twins, with medical issues, with a contract that then gets canceled because I'm in the hospital, right? Like, there's no social structure to help someone in a situation like that. And then rather than saying, well, we're the federal government, we will, address this in public service because we're the employer of the civil service. Rather than saying, we're going to force the provinces to stop hiring contract faculty in the colleges, right? Ontario's college system, 50% of the faculty members are part-time, and it is illegal to unionize, right? Instead of saying we're going to fix that, what did Bill Morneau say? Other than accept it. He said, well, we're going to invest in job training. And we're going to invest in making sure that you are trained to go from this job to this job, right? They've already invested in job training-ish. They've told us to go get our higher education. They've told us to go pay tens of thousands of dollars for higher education. And all of a sudden, that wasn't good enough, so now they're going to invest in job training. The problem is that these narratives are really hard to cut through because it makes sense that technology is going to get rid of all of our jobs and we really have a future where robots are going to make our food and drive our trucks and take all of our jobs. But these narratives existed since like the 1800s. There's a reason why Luddites were a thing, right? And so what we have to do is find ways to resist that kind of logic and fight back against those kinds of narratives. When I started talking about the resistance and the crushing of resistance, I wanted to come back to that at the end because I think that is one of the most dangerous elements of the precarious life. So young people are often said, we're apathetic, we don't vote or whatever. And if you look at voting records, it's kind of true, right? Like, young people vote 4 times less frequently as old people, right? And that obviously has a lot of impacts on who politicians play to or who they talk about. But Justin Trudeau was elected with the support of young people, right? He is the prime minister of young people, right? And I should have had air quotes when I said that. Did anyone see what happened yesterday at the young workers? Those of us who were in the room yesterday, or we saw it online, Justin Trudeau comes in, and it's supposed to be kind of like a nice chat, his sleeves are all rolled up, he's looking like he's like just an average dude, right? And young workers, there's kind of a whole bunch of different groups in the room, but a lot of members walked in and they stood up and they turned their back to him. And he was so pissed. Right? And he's like, you will not turn your back to me. I don't even, he must have good eyes, because you folks all were looking that way, I feel like you can tell. He's like, wow, I just said that. And he was very upset by it. And it was a symbolic gesture to say, we're done with the platitudes, we are done with the lip service. You know, in the case of the PSAC members in the room, can you pay us, right? Can you fix the Phoenix debacle? And I saw this from the perspective of someone who was beaten by police at the G20, right? I was in the G20, I was smoked by police, I was caught on camera, my grandmother saw it live, she wanted to kill me if I wasn't dead by police. And all we were doing at the G20, as just like all anyone is doing when they're trying to protest to get their voices heard, was we wanted to confront, you know, the global powers to say, you have to think of the people. That's all we were doing. And so to be in a room yesterday, where there was no riot police, where no one was getting their head cracked, to see young workers who are precarious, right? That people were being filmed, people could be fired for what happened yesterday for their jobs. They, you know, there's repercussion for taking that kind of action. Standing up to the Prime Minister of Canada, the most popular Prime Minister potentially in the world. That gave me, like, life, right? That gave me the most stark example of a simple and symbolic action to resist. But it's not just as if that's the only thing that's happening, right? So under neoliberalism, as communities have been further and further attacked, we are also seeing the most radical activity come from people organizing and communities organizing. So whether it's Indigenous language schools of people saying, we are retaking our language, we are learning our language, we are using our language, and get the hell out of here, right? This is our land, our language. That gives me life. Whether it's Black Lives Matter saying anti-Black racism ends because we are ending it, that gives me life. And the student action in Montreal. You know, when you see 400,000 students in the streets fighting for free education, right? That's life. Now, I also had the unfortunate situation of witnessing the mass arrests of 100 students outside my front door in 2015, where students were marking the anniversary of the student protests, and it didn't make any news. And so students were walking down the street just outside of my house in Quebec City, and it was about 10 o'clock at night, and the police kettled the students. And it was minus 10, it was March, the end of March, so it was minus 10, and they arrested every single one of these students for protesting austerity. And when I say students, like, I mean like they were kids. Like these were high school students. Quebec high school ends in like 16, right? And because my house was in the kettle, like what are the odds, right? We were getting people into the house. And I felt like I was going to be shot or something for doing this. And the students, there was 3 students that came to the house. The police are on my steps, and they pull me off of my steps. And it's all in French, so I'm kind of scrambling because my French isn't all that good when you're being like hit by police. And the students were like, she lives here, she lives here, she lives here. And the police demanded to see the deed to my house or my license to prove that I live there. Right? Fine, here. And so I was like, everyone on these steps are my guests. They're allowed in my house. And so we let them into the house. Oh, she can stay. No, I'm kidding. I know she'll have a shout out. She's weirder than I am. And so I told three guys to get to the house. I was like, go sit in my house. Like, just get inside. And they were shaking. They're like 16. And I was like, you can go. Like, go sneak out the back. And they're like... The next day, I got anonymous flowers from a mother who knew what we had done. And I lived in fear for a good year that I was going to get arrested for doing something as simple as, this is my house, these are my steps, they are my guests. And it was an immediate reminder that the entire illusion of private property, the entire illusion on which we have built this country, will be taken from you if you resist and if you stand up to the state. For something as basic, in that case, as fighting for public service and fighting against austerity, but we're seeing this all the time. We're seeing this with pipeline activists, we're seeing this with Indigenous activists across Canada and across the United States, of course. And these kinds of resistance, I think, unfortunately, despite the roses and unicorns of our Prime Minister, are going to get worse. So, one of the ways I like to construct my speeches is to leave the smallest amount of time for solutions, because I don't have any. And so I can say, sorry, you're all sad, and I'm going to just piece off the stage. But that's not fair, so I have about 5 minutes. So what are the ways that we resist? Well, first of all, today, I don't really like honoring politicians because I don't respect them, but Niki has done such a good job in bringing the people today together. And so for the rest of the day, every person that's speaking is part of the solution. And not just part, we're all part of the solution, but actively resisting or doing something that is making a difference and that is trying to mitigate the forces of capitalism and neoliberalism that are being imposed on us. And so I want to honor and thank everybody who is here doing that work, whether or not you're at the front of the stage or if you're in the audience, because you are all actively engaging in the solution. So I'll try to do that for the next 3 minutes, and you know when to clap, right? Okay. That's not enough, right? We know that, the social movements, the labor movement, we are more marginalized than we should be, right? And so we also have to look at our social location. Who are our relations? Who are we around? What are the structures that we actually can get involved in? Do you have the stomach for mainstream politics? If you do, you should get into them. If you don't, that's cool. You can join my club. I'll never run for office because it probably sucks. But you have to decide what side you want to operate on and then do it, because we need people on both sides. But more importantly, we need to find ways to respond to the garbage that came out of Bill Murrow's mouth. The garbage that comes from the columnists at the National Post and at the Globe and Mail that claim somehow that we are the burden, right? I don't remember seeing a finance minister at the age of 25, right? I don't remember seeing the head of Rogers at the age of 30 being like, yeah, I'm gonna just keep gouging people, I'm gonna lay people off, I'm gonna break the union. This is not our generation's problem, right? And it's not even a generational problem. Because at the end of the day, older people tend to have more money because you have a lifetime to amass it, unless you're super a Bronfman or something and you're born into it. So we have to remind ourselves, the millennial struggle, this is a structural struggle, that it doesn't actually matter about your age, that a lot of older workers are feeling the pinch in ways that older workers haven't felt in a long time. And that this is still a class issue, and there's obviously intersections with race, and there's obviously intersections with gender and ability, and sexual orientation, and gender identity. But sometimes talking about this stuff's a little too heavy for the Globe and Mail. So we have to also get creative. We have to tell our own narratives, tell our own stories, and we have to do what I think is the most radical thing under neoliberalism. So we need to hold each other's hands and build new organizations, build new social solidarity, and build each other up to confront whether it's a riot cop or a racist policy, whether it's part-time work or whether it's contract by contract by contract. We have to find those structures that are self-funding, that are alternative, and that tell this monster of neoliberalism that it stops with this generation, and it stops maybe at Parliament Hill, but first, it stops in the streets. Thank you.
for your inspirational words and your in-depth analysis, and calling on all of us to continue the fight back. Thank you. So right now we've got a break for a few minutes. We'll be getting set for the next panel, the Pekakucha. So I'd love to invite all the speakers that are involved in the next panel to come up to the front. And the rest, enjoy the break, and we'll be back here at 10:30. Merci, on se retrouve à 10h30.